it starts with, like any kind of science, with surveying the territory. And so what are we often blind to? Um, we're often missing so much, but does it matter? And so that's the question. Where's the line? And do we go back and forth? And of course we do. We notice things we should have noticed before, and and sometimes belatedly find out things we never did. But it's a learning process. It's observation. You have to follow clues from the environment as to what else is going on that's missing from, that would fill a gap in your brain. Anyway, there are of course your sensations, your feelings, your bodily feelings, your emotional feelings, your intuitive feelings, all kinds of feelings, and smells, sounds, sights, thoughts. They can be too fast or slow, glaring or faint, and so it takes alertness to notice things. And people who aren't taught the fun of noticing things don't think of being alert. So we have cultural blindness too. And there are things we hardly ever recognize. The symbols, what are the meanings of symbols? They're abstractions, and without context, they don't mean anything at all. But to somebody who has an experience of putting the symbols in context, well, they probably do. And then, of course, everybody marches to a different drum, and so we don't see in relating to people mostly what drum they're marching to. There's a lot of things that we really would like to know, but are missing, and then and then how to live in the world without any experience of the world. We if you enter a new situation without experience, you feel the same way every time, whether it's a new office or a new grade in school, or a new important relationship. There's all sorts of queasiness in all those cases, and anything really new that triggers the learning process. You start thinking in slow motion and noticing things in particular. And infants are in that position. Of course, they step into a world totally surprised by the fact that there's going to be anything to deal with, and because there wasn't in the womb. So we have a lot, and but. And there's evidence that there are things that do matter, and we often respond well enough to survive. So, what's going on with our world? So I think that we could simplify things a little, divide up the brain into three parts. Things we usually know automatically, things that our daily experience tells us without having to do any questioning. And then there, in the blue areas, symbolically, things of the mind that we'll never know about. There's a whole lot of that. There's only a certain layer of the specially prepared mental fabrics that represent themselves as information to us. And then there's those things way in the back that you know how to live without experience. And I wish there was more research on that. It would be very interesting. Now, what about systems? Now, systems all seem to grow from the inside, and like this is an air current arising from a hot surface. The sunlight hits the surface, warms the thin layer of air and is blocked by the cool air above. So something tunnels through the cool mass of air above. So that's forming a system. It's an energized connection of um, of rotating, first rotating and then rising forces, rotating as a donut horizontally, forming a column in the middle that rises up and gets going so fast it overshoots its original design and pushes out at the top, and sometimes becomes turbulent and generally is fast enough it cuts off its connection to the thin layer of heat below. So that's the universal transition from nothing to something that I studied quite a bit, and is where much of my insights and questions, good questions, came from. Why does it get going so fast that it disconnects itself from its context? Well, it just gets organized that way, and one thing exceeds the speed of the other. Anyway, then you have seeds that the little germ in it sprouts and sends up a shoot and down some roots and searching for sun and water, and sometimes gets too much water and too little sun and falls over. Well, that's the hazard of life, you could say. But this is showing you that growth is a risky creative process. It's a very creative process, but it has to respond to things around it, and so do people. We sprout in the womb from an egg cell, and then we grow to look something very different from a cell. But our internal relationships form a cell of self-connection. That's what our bodies are. Is a harmonization of internal relationships that allows us to be animate in the world and respond to the world around us. So if what we know is the cheese shown here as a piece of Swiss cheese, are the systems, if what we know is the cheese, if the cheese is what we know, the fabric of our understanding, and what are the systems we see as wholes? Because a system you see from the outside, you see a person from the outside, an air current from the outside, the seedling from the outside. You don't see it from the inside. But that's where the energy and action is. That's where the organization is. That's where the feedback loops are. But none of those connect outside, visually and not physically in many ways. Although obviously the internal feedbacks need some connection with the outside to operate with for long, at least. Anyway, so a growth process builds on an animating seed, something that searches for energy, and materials to connect and build with, and begins with a burst of self-organization, which is the growth period, the rapid growth period, where it's doubling and using its old design to replicate new designs. And we're usually blind to all of that when we're looking at life as a whole. The systems are hidden, completely hidden from view. So this is symbolically representing hidden from view, holes in our fabric of understanding. Somehow they don't seem to be there in our understanding because we're blind to our blindness of it. So we put together in our minds a network of things that make sense to us for what we do see, and they leave out what we don't. So half my time is over on the first two slides, or no, a little less than half the time. So let me see. So considering the threats to the planet, as we were talking about, do we have enough evidence to say someone has no idea what's going on? I think conclusively that's yes. The using our old solutions for our new problems is literally, if you look at it carefully, making them much worse. And so, but is the cause of that we keep using the old solutions for new problems having the opposite of the intended effect? Is that emotional? Is it cognitive? Is it cultural? Is it biological? Or are these hidden forms of nature, things that we wouldn't know? We couldn't know. We have no perspective for knowing until until the system disrupts itself, perhaps. So that, yeah, I guess I could read all of this. I urge you. Oh, I should use the chat some point to paste all the links at the end. I'll remember to do that. Anyway, so how our solutions became our problems. For example, sustainability, as an idea, the SDGs, the IPCC plan to stop climate change, they're all designed to accelerate it. All very specifically designed to sustain finance. That's, if you look at the rules, that's what it's sustaining. It's sustaining finance, not the earth. So that's the perspective that has made us prosper for hundreds of years. It's not making us prosper now. So we need a new paradigm, overused word. We need to broaden our view. And one of them is to see the networks of relationships that we see as powerful and recognize that those are simplifications we created in our minds to overpower the world with relationships. So many of our profitable designs are based on the designs of nature, but then simplified to exclude the contexts of nature that'll be disrupted if we use them, especially if we use them too much. So we see connections, they're there, but we're not keeping the contexts of them in mind as we use them. Like the whole professional world, uses their rules for making money instead of rules for negotiating relationships with the world they're making money in. They leave out the connecting part, and it became very addictive to feel we have so much power for doing nothing, putting money in a shoebox and having it multiply. Energy deliveries from far abroad. So the problem seems to be that we're blind to the system we're part of. It's only natural in that we appear not to. We appear to be in a runaway growth system that are found all over nature, that we got caught up in quite long ago, but we actually never designed, and so we don't know how to control it. So much is hidden from view. We can't see it as a whole until it behaves as a whole by collapsing. Now, it started to, as many people have noticed, and of course there are cases where that happens and things do just collapse, like the Roman Empire and lots of others related to that model of growing till you exhaust nature, or growing till you take war to the end. Rule number one is expand your contexts, survey the territories, plural, look at old things with new eyes, notice changes, connected and separate ways with lasting and little effect. And then compare cases. See nature versus being reduced to concepts. Go back and think of this image in your life, in your neighborhood, in your friends, in your business, wherever. There are these relationships embedded in a rich context of self-organizing organic systems, and then compare it with the practices that often reduce to a simple a bunch of rules. So what are examples of things that grow to overshoot or to avoid it? And their relationships do it, careers, businesses, dinner parties. Evolution does it. I have a bunch of nice examples of how evolution did it. Economies, things that overshoot and then collapse only partly, and then revive, and then overshoot and collapse, revive, overshoot and collapse. Humanity has been on that kind of boom and bust cycle for a long time. We're just on a bigger boom and bigger bust point. It is the kind that we might not recover from, I think, and lots of people would say. I certainly do. But anyway, what defines overshoot? You should think about that. I didn't fill this in because I intended to have time to talk about this and have you fill it in. So what defines overshoot? Well, it's defined as something about the breaking point of systemic relationships, of organization, the organizational breaking point of either or both internal organization and external organization. And we're seeing both in the world today. The external world organization is going haywire, showing a breakdown of its systemic designs, and the internal humanity is going haywire too, with crazy demands and all sorts of imaginary demons, and also sticking to the death with the old solutions that used to work fabulously and now are causing the problem. So that's that tension, between things that get into trouble and won't change, or need extra special creative input to change, or extra special force. Nature's trying the extra special force, and we'll see if that brings about any change. I see a good bit in the networks, but conversation networks, but why do some things stay far from the edge? Like if you're making a new relationship with a person, you're very often quite sensitive to any sign of discomfort or misunderstanding or taking the wrong suggestion or whatever, and responding quickly. Our blindness to the systems of our world is keeping us from doing that, it seems. But most of the times, people are very quick to respond. We are, after all, nature's most alert, attentive, responsive, creative organism. And we're frozen in place systemically on saving the earth. It's incredible. But anyway, what causes runaway growth? I guess it's a lack of response in the end. But at the beginning, it's the emergent creativity of nature, the germ that finds a receptive and plentiful context to grab energy and working resources from to start building something. Now, why systems build at all, I can only characterize. I can't really explain, because it's as simple as a bowl of soup sitting on a table with a person sitting there and no spoon. Well, a system develops as soon as the spoon is provided. There isn't one until then. So it's a connection between coordinating parts that generate an energy flow. And why nature's so full of them, but yet they're so rare too, especially the ones that keep multiplying. It's a puzzle. And then what causes self-controlled growth? Well, I mentioned it in terms of the relationships, that you're responsive. Internal forces are responsive to external signals. That there's a whole system internal response to a simple signal from the outside. So anyway, the runaway growth is the secret of the universe, self-control, the secret of life. And let's see, let's compare easy cases of avoiding overshoot and near failures. Well, we won't have time to go into this much, but the easy case is when you're walking down the street and about to run into somebody, and catch yourself at the very last minute. And the urgent and conflicted are when you really want that ticket, the last ticket in the ticket booth, and are tempted to push ahead of other people. And so that's where our economy is. It's got all these. The whole human race developed over thousands of years, actually, this endless desire for comfort and pleasure, and it's gotten us, along with all the other little gaps in our thinking, into this serious difficulty. The most general survival plan, though, is to respond to those signals, moving growth resources to system care. That's what happens at birth. When the growth resources are cut off, the little kid is not supposed to multiply anymore. It's supposed to start getting sustenance from the exterior and learning about the world where he lives, he or she. And so that's appropriate, that you go from growth to care as you go from one form of design to the other. The first form of design is to extrapolating the original pattern, and the second form of design is to coordinate and perfect the resulting pattern. And so growth and maturation. And
About 5 minutes, Jesse.
okay. So this is, I'm right at the end, and I get to read my survival path. Things the blind might see, to understand who and where we are. So long ago, uncontrolled growth overtook world economies, like an invasive species feeding on our cultures, designed to end in breakdown and chaos, and with no design except to end in breakdown and chaos. So we have to invent something, is the point there. Those who took credit for it and the prophets of the whole were blind to how that caused the growing harms occurring everywhere else out of their control. So the people profiting from it don't know what those profits are for, when the profits of the whole are really for caring for the system. And if we don't use them for caring for the system now, we're goners. However, how to do that calls for some thinking and skillful care of the people in trouble, including those who took the profits. That offers a very different view of what we face. No one is seen as directly responsible, and all the captives of it blind to it. Wouldn't that be a nice change? It could break the ice to see systems working as wholes, creating the profits, taken by people unwittingly using them to drive the world crisis, who are also in need of being rescued too. So, new studies from every viewpoint would follow if this became a recognized possible explanation for the situation we're in. So, all sorts of new studies, both original and extending from the early works of others like Jevons, Keynes, lots of those others are not well known, including my own, which are more of a holistic kind than the technical scientific kind. Simple surveys are what you start with. Simple surveys would show growth to be an organizing, not numerical process for beginning systems, an explosion of internal and external relations that will stabilize or not, and depending on the internal response, because stabilizing a growth system, except by exhausting it, has to be an internal response to retain the cohesion that the system developed during its rapid growth. So that cohesion is what we need to respond to, the pressures on it. We're firmly in the or not group now with the other powerful startups that fail on Earth, lots and lots of those, growing ever faster toward collapse. Yeah, that's our present family tree. In fact, we emerged from economies that collapsed and trying to fix the growth system to make it perpetual, which of course will collapse. Growth systems that stabilize, like living systems, become cohesive and responsive to that, responsive to its strains with care. If the strains on the cohesion, like a group of friends, if they feel a strain, they change attitudes and care for them. It's a great thing with friends. Steering away from multiplying old designs to securing their connections, internal and external. Instead, is that another emerging family we might like to join? Well, I hope so. So there's more to it than recombining the sciences that developed in the growth honeymoon period, as the Song of Power now seems to be out of tune. Anyway, so this is the links I'll paste in the chat. This is the growth curve that I circulate all the time, where you go from home zero, meaning a world without anything of you, to a germination of some seed, to home number one, which is the exponential growth of that seed, and then a turn forward, feeling the need to remain coherent as a system, and shifting to home two, the maturation period, and then when ready to set off on the long run, home three, being released, graduating from school finally, and having a little help getting going. Anyway, so that's that. If we stay later after the recording stops, there are other slides and things to talk about. I guess that's it. Thank you very much. I'm amazed I finished on time.
Yes, thank you very much, Jesse. That was perfect.